Thank you, Professor Uttam, my colleagues in dais, distinguished people here. I thank Seva for giving me this opportunity to talk to you people, and more importantly, giving me this opportunity in Itanagar, which is the part I could not visit in my time, and keeping a very good thing. Himalaya is a very beautiful genesis. And before I forget, I would like the person who made that disaster list to please provide me references. I think that's a very, very important list displayed there. So we can corroborate in Himalaya. Himalaya is a very beautiful massive protruding outside the tectonic protrusion, right? And Himalayan orogeny is not that smooth. 55 million years back, that plates, they hit each other and Himalaya start coming, right? And this hitting was not that smooth. It was too much fighting in between took place. I'll not go in geological structure. Himalayan genesis started beginning. And that's why you have, because of this fighting, you have a Pir Panjal, Great Himalaya, Jaskar, Ladakh, Karakoram in North Suleiman Range, and here you have 90-degree Khasi Jaintia Hill. So it's a perfect bracket of Himalaya when we say it Indian Himalayan region. Right? I am not talking high mountain Asia because it becomes a plateau. And this geological structure sustains, I think, 8 countries because of the river flowing, originating from Himalayas. And when Himalaya came up, roughly 22 million years ago, we have this monsoon came in. Otherwise, there was a winds which were going directly northward. There was a no wind, no monsoon, no rain. And if there would not be an Himalaya, very famous historian, Basam, colonial historian, told that Himalaya would have been, India would have been just a desert, right? So monsoon started coming by 22 million years back. And when monsoon started coming, continuous hitting by mountain rains, you have a scrapping of the sediments, which has deposited, and you have a Sivaliks, right? I'll not go in geological push and pull. Aravali came there, Western Ghat came there, Khasi Jaintia has a different kind of connotations there. So Himalaya is a very beautiful, massive and natural laboratory. I am sure that many of you have not gone beyond 3,000 meters in Himalaya. That's what is the very important beauty of Himalaya. And because of that, you have a vegetation line, you have a snow line, you have further migration on the Himalaya. And there is a very beautiful by Mike Searle, Colliding Continents. I think you can read it as a textbook. It's a very beautiful Mike Searle book on the colliding continent. And then this cascading nature of Himalayas controls the interaction in the global. Somebody previous to me was talking. It controls the global circulation of air, regional circulation of air, Indian summer monsoon, and local circulation, which is shown by cloudburst, controlling of the orographic precipitation, and that's what lead to this. Yesterday somebody was referred Shyamji's Kalidas romantic imagination of in Megdudam, right? There's plenty of such connotation which has come in the historical perspective.
Could you try again?
Perspective of the monsoon in this, we have Arthashastra. Kautilya has mentioned role of watcher, how the economy is dependent on that. He has mentioned that. You have Ibn Battuta who gave the name monsoon. Baramihir gave the calculation, how the calculation of the flowing rain has to be calculated. So monsoon has become a lifeline for as far as Indian subcontinent is concerned. And this is 80% agriculture is dependent on that. And if you go for the geopolitical point of view, you should have a Silk Route book by Peter Fraglon, which is written how the Silk Route crossing the Chinese material to the West and West material back to China. And of late, very important book in the monsoons, its title itself is Monsoon by Richard Kaplan, which tells the how geopolitics of this Indian subcontinent is controlled by the monsoon. So monsoon in itself is not only important for landmass or India, it has a very huge geopolitical connotation fixtures where you have a very, very important role of monsoon which is coming. Now coming to the Himalaya itself, because this Him Samvad is limited to mountainous region of the, there are very many important issues linked to the monsoon. When monsoon comes up and hits the Himalaya, the precipitation distribution is not simply like that. When I'm talking precipitation and monsoon, they are two different things. Monsoon is a dynamics which brings the moisture in, right? But precipitation is another mechanism within the vertical atmospheric column. How the precipitation formation takes place, that's more complex process at the regional scale, right? And that's what the reason. And before I forget, we are sitting in a northeast region. Our study shows that in next 5 decades, monsoon is shifting westward because Arabian Sea has warmed up. I was discussing with Shyamji morning, so that's why I remembered. So Arabian Sea is warmed up. So monsoon has lot of energetics available to move northward. And earlier it used to get hooked up in the Shillong Plateau. I don't know how many of you have seen the Shillong Plateau. There's a gap in the Shillong Plateau. It used to enter, and that plateau's boundaries used to hold the monsoonal flow, and it gets slower down. And because of this slowing, northeast has a lot of amount of precipitation happening. But in the present case, because warming is there, monsoon is more dynamic, it's not getting hooked up in the Shillong Plateau, it is riding over the Shillong Plateau and quickly turning along the foothill of Himalayas. Right? So in next 5 decades time, northeast is going to be a deficit amount of precipitation, and whole of this mechanism is leading that Indian summer monsoon is moving towards westward side. So now the question comes, how you are going to manage your water, not only for your day-to-day use, for your society, for your forest, agriculture, cattle, crop, so on and so forth. So monsoon when hits the Indian Himalayan region, orography, it tries to ride over the orography, right? And on general, if you look at the map behind you, that shows that the monsoon is primarily limited to 3,000 meter elevation. Beyond that, your Himalaya is drier, right? So most of the vegetation line, snow line, or whatever the complexity of orography, of flow of the monsoon happens, the fight happens within the 3,000 meters, right? If this topography doesn't let it go because of the gravity, it pulls it down. If monsoon has a flow, monsoon goes up, and whatever this happens. But in case of cloud burst, where is very localized meso-alpha phenomena, the cloud burst can go up to the 14 kilometers if it get hooked up in this. So I'll not go in cloud burst and flash flood, I'll come to that later. So your lower elevation, lower foothill gets more amount of precipitation. As it climbs, your precipitation is decreasing, right? Now, if it is decreasing, and then your whole Himalaya doesn't have the same topography. Can you go to the next slide, please? You have a cross sections there. So next slide may give more impetus on that. Your Himalayan elevation is not similar, right? Go to the next and next and next. Yes, this one. Now I have cut it on along those next one, along those lines, and you see the Himalayan topography is very, very different along those lines. So your precipitation, I'll not go in technical details, it's very simple. This blue line you see, wherever the Himalayan and line which is gray, if you see that where it grows, blue line dips down, right? So up to 3,000 meter, water is there, precipitation is there, and it dipped down there. So there is a lot of orographic interaction happening between the monsoonal flow and all these things. So these things are seen changing in the recent time. So if Himalayan gets deficit amount of water, your rivers are going to dry, and in case of Ganges, we have seen that in 40 years time it will double. But then after that, Ganges is going to slowly dry up because Ganges doesn't have the supplement of water as Indus and Brahmaputra has. Indus and Brahmaputra is mainly fed by the snow deposits, whereas Ganges is 80% Indian summer monsoon deposit, right? So Ganges will deficit will happen. In case of Brahmaputra and Indus, as Professor Uttam has told, that the snow days are decreasing, liquid water days are increasing because of the global warming. So you have more amount of precipitation, which used to happen in the snow, now you have a liquid. In fact, I'll not go agriculture, health and all those. I don't want to talk here now. So this is a very beautiful. I'll quickly come to the elevation dependent warming now. This is very important. Lower elevation warming rate, I am not saying warming. Warming rate is lesser than higher elevation rate. So higher elevation rate, because it's a dry, there is no moisture. So density is not there, right? So more temperature warming rate is there. So if higher elevation warms more than the lower elevation, what is going to happen? Your vegetation line will come down, your migration, animal migration has already occurred. And let me tell you, if it happens like 50 years, human will also have to migrate. And that is the factuals from history when Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Saraswati, all these civilizations which were very robust has gone down. And slowly these migration will shift here and there. I had listed a lot of things here, but because of the paucity of time, I'll not go in detail. But disaster is another important thing which Himsambat, some kind of recommendation is going to come. Flash floods. We all wash utensils with sponge at home, right? We fill it with water. Earlier what used to happen, all the atmosphere used to precipitate homogeneously. But now if you pinch that sponge at home, your water will come from that point. So what's happening? All water is going and coming down from that. That's extreme. Nothing else, right? An atmosphere behaves like that, right? And predicting such events is next to impossible. We can only think of early warning system for flash floods and for cloudburst reasons, right? So disaster is another important reason where we have to say, previous speaker talk of the AI quantum mission. Yes, if we have data. Of course, ChatGPT tells you very artificial synthetic versions of processes. But how much those synthetic versions of processes are really implementable in the Himalayan? Even IPCC has told, IPCC is gap area in their climate change report because data is not there. Any conclusion on such vulnerable place will be very, very difficult. So that is one point. You should have a strong management for the purpose of this. And I think we have to consider the environmental dependent climate change now, because that's very, very prominent. And Himalaya has become very important, vulnerable from more point of view, and possibly some synthesis report, Shyamji, I request, that comes out of this deliberations, particularly Himalaya-centric, which at many forum I am asked, if you are telling monsoon is going less, so what do you want to say? Because I talk on the facts. I don't have a clear answer, but as we have an 11-year celebration of science and technology a few days back, there also PSA has told that this is now time has come, policy planning has to be in actions now. No more policy and planning deliberations. They remain in the, of course they are required, based on the inputs, but we need to think for actions. Thank you for listening me patiently.